Today, we're talking about something many of us might find confusing in relationships when someone we care about pulls away. It's a really common struggle. We're going to dive into how understanding this behavior can actually make things feel much calmer for us. Our insights come from Mindy River's book, Understanding the Dismissive Avoidant Attachment Style.
That's right, Theodore. The core idea is that when you're close to someone who has this dismissive avoidant way of relating, it often makes you feel very anxious. You're constantly trying to figure out why they act the way they do, like why someone who seems to like you can suddenly get distant.
So you're saying that this back and forth, this on-again, off-again feeling, creates a lot of stress because you're always trying to guess what's next. It's like walking on eggshells.
Exactly. You might try to prevent them from pulling away by changing how you act, but that constant effort is really tiring, and your mind just keeps spinning, looking for answers that never quite come. Understanding doesn't magically fix the relationship, but it gives your mind a clear explanation, which can help calm your nervous system.
That makes sense. Uncertainty often makes us anxious. Our minds try to keep us safe, right? So if a connection feels shaky, our brain sees it as a threat.
Yes, for humans, connection has always been important for survival. So when a close relationship feels uncertain, it can feel like danger. But understanding takes that mystery and turns it into something you can recognize. When you recognize a pattern, you can react more calmly instead of always guessing.
Give me an example. What does this look like in real life?
Imagine you have a really nice weekend with your partner, and then they suddenly become quiet or stop reaching out. Before, you might have thought, they're losing interest, or I did something wrong. These thoughts are scary because they make you feel unloved.
And that spirals into more anxiety. I've been there, thinking, am I too much? Did I scare them away?
But when you understand avoidant attachment, you can consider another reason. That closeness you shared might have actually scared them. The weekend might have made the relationship feel more serious, and they might be trying to get their sense of independence back. This doesn't make the distance feel good, but it makes it understandable. Your mind is less likely to jump to the worst conclusions.
So it's not about accepting bad behavior, but about not taking it so personally, right? Like their actions aren't a direct comment on my worth.
Exactly. Understanding helps you realize that their behavior is usually about their own discomfort with closeness, not about whether you're good enough. If they text less, it doesn't mean you're less lovable. If they seem distant, it doesn't mean you're rejected. You stop using their changes in mood as a mirror for your own value, which really helps lower anxiety.
It sounds like understanding helps us sort through all the little things that feel like clues. Like a late text doesn't have to be a huge crisis.
That's a great way to put it. We often treat every small moment as a big sign. A delayed message can feel like a disaster. A short sentence feels scary. A missed call feels like a turning point. We do this because we're trying to predict if the connection is safe. But when you understand the bigger pattern, you can react to the pattern instead of each small thing. You can say, oh, this is what happens when we get close, or this is what happens when they're stressed, and then choose a more stable response. That steadiness comes from being informed.
Okay, so let's say I notice they're stressed, and I know that usually makes them pull away. What then? My instinct might be to try to pull them closer, to fix it.
Without understanding, you might indeed chase after them because you feel the distance and panic. But with understanding, you might still feel sad, but you can choose a different path. You might give them space while also asking for a quick check-in later. Or you might focus on getting support from your friends or family instead of trying to get comfort from someone who can't give it right then. This choice lowers anxiety because it makes you feel less helpless. Understanding gives you a map, and a map gives you options.
It also seems like our own reactions can make us anxious too. We feel anxious, then we feel bad about feeling anxious.
Absolutely. Many people in these relationships feel anxious and then feel ashamed of it. They think, I'm not usually like this, or worry they're becoming too needy. They try to hide their feelings, which just makes them stronger. When you understand this dynamic, you see your anxiety isn't random. It's a natural reaction to inconsistency. So your reactions make sense. When you stop judging your own feelings, you remove one layer of stress. Understanding can break that second layer of being anxious about being anxious.
So it's about shifting from trying to control things to simply seeing what's real.
Yes, in confusing relationships, people often try to control the outcome. They try to say the perfect thing at the perfect time and be available in just the right amount. They try to avoid anything that might make the other person withdraw. This is a form of control, even if it comes from a place of love, but control creates anxiety because it's a constant uphill battle. Clarity is different. Clarity asks, what is truly happening here? What is this relationship actually giving? What has my experience been over time? When you move toward clarity, you start to relax because you're no longer trying to force the relationship into stability through self-editing. You're just seeing it as it is.
What about when people try to make themselves smaller to keep the other person close?
That's a very common example. You might try to be low maintenance, stop asking for reassurance, stop bringing up problems, and just keep things light. You might get some closeness sometimes and feel a temporary sense of relief, but you're still anxious because you're not being yourself. When you understand avoidant attachment, you may realize that shrinking yourself does not create real security. It creates a fragile peace. That realization can be painful. It can also be relieving because it frees you from the belief that you must perform to be loved. When you release the performance, anxiety often decreases because you stop fighting against yourself.
And how does this understanding help us set boundaries?
Understanding helps you set better boundaries, and boundaries are calming. They tell your nervous system, I will protect us. When you do not understand the pattern, you may set boundaries based on fear. You may threaten to leave in a moment of panic, then take it back. Those swings keep the system unstable. When you understand the pattern, you can set boundaries based on reality. You might decide you need consistent communication. You might decide you won't tolerate silent treatment. You might decide you will not keep investing in someone who refuses repair. These boundaries do not guarantee the other person will change. They do guarantee that you will not lose yourself trying to adapt to inconsistency. That guarantee is deeply calming.
It sounds like understanding is a powerful tool, but what can't it do?
That's an important point. Understanding cannot make you okay with being mistreated. It cannot make loneliness feel good. It cannot turn inconsistency into consistency. Sometimes people use understanding to tolerate pain longer than they should. They tell themselves it is just their attachment style, as if that means they should accept anything. Real understanding includes the impact. It includes your exhaustion. It includes your needs. When understanding includes your needs, it becomes a tool for peace rather than a tool for self-abandonment.
So, understanding gives us a way to talk about what's happening more clearly.
Yes, it gives you language. When you can name what is happening, you can explain your experience to friends, talk to a therapist, or even communicate with the avoidant person in a way that is specific rather than emotional chaos. You might say, when we get close and then you pull away without communication, I feel unsafe and I need a clear message when you need space. That kind of language is calming because it reduces guessing. It also helps you see whether the avoidant person is willing to meet you with care. If they are not, the clarity helps you grieve reality instead of staying stuck in hope fueled by confusion.
Ultimately, it seems like this understanding brings you back to yourself.
Exactly. It helps you stop trying to earn steadiness from someone who cannot consistently provide it. It helps you stop using their behavior as a measure of your worth. It helps you see patterns clearly and respond with dignity. Understanding is not a cure for pain, but it is a cure for the kind of anxiety that comes from confusion, self-blame, and constant guessing. When you understand, you can breathe a little more freely. You can make choices with clearer eyes. You can love with compassion while also protecting your peace. And that balance is often what anxiety has been asking for all along.
That first section really lays the groundwork for how much clearer things can become. Moving on, one of the biggest reliefs people describe is realizing it's not me. This must be a huge shift for many.
It is, Theodore. It's often a profound relief, almost physical, like finally being able to breathe after holding your breath for a long time. It doesn't mean the relationship suddenly becomes easy or that pain disappears, but the story in your head starts to change. Instead of seeing every time they pull away as proof that you're unlovable or too much, you begin to see it as part of a pattern that existed long before you came along. That shift brings a stability you might not have felt in a very long time.
So when someone you care about pulls away, our minds naturally try to find a reason, and often the easiest explanation we come up with is that we did something wrong?
Yes, you think if I were more attractive, more interesting, less emotional, they would stay close. Or maybe I am asking for too much. These thoughts are not foolish. They are attempts to make sense of a confusing experience. They are also attempts to regain control. If the cause is you, then you can fix you. If the cause is not you, then you have to face the harder truth that the other person's closeness is limited or unpredictable. Many people would rather blame themselves than feel that uncertainty. Self-blame hurts, yet it can feel safer than helplessness.
That's a tough truth to face. It means we often bend over backwards, changing ourselves to fit the other person's comfort.
Exactly. You might express a need, perhaps to talk more, to spend time together, or to repair after conflict. The dismissive avoidant person reacts with distance. They shut down, they become irritated, they say they need space. You feel the familiar sting, and your mind goes to work. You begin reviewing what you said. You wonder if your tone was wrong. You wonder if you pushed too hard. You decide that next time you will ask more gently. You decide you will wait longer. You decide you will be easier. This pattern can become a way of life. You become a person who is constantly adjusting your shape to keep someone close. Over time, you may not even notice how much of yourself you have edited.
But the relief comes when you see that no matter what you do, the pattern continues?
Yes, you might be kind and they pull away. You might be patient and they pull away. You might be independent and they still pull away after closeness. You might stop asking for anything and they still become distant when intimacy grows. At some point, your mind begins to accept that you cannot behave perfectly enough to create consistent connection if the other person is afraid of connection itself. That acceptance can feel like grief at first. It can also feel like freedom. Freedom comes when you stop treating the relationship as a test you keep failing.
So realizing it's not me doesn't mean you're perfect, but it means your basic desire for love and closeness isn't the problem.
Precisely. Everyone has things to learn in relationships. It means that the central problem, the pattern of closeness followed by withdrawal, is not caused by your basic humanity. Your feelings are not the issue. Your desire for intimacy is not the issue. Your wish to be loved with steadiness is not the issue. When you understand avoidant attachment, you can see that the avoidant person's distancing is often driven by their discomfort with dependence and vulnerability. That discomfort can be triggered by closeness itself. In other words, you can be wonderful and still trigger avoidance, because avoidance is not a response to your worth. It is a response to intimacy.
It's like they're affectionate when you're busy or about to leave, but then distant when you're actually available. It's so confusing.
Without understanding, you might think, they only want me when I am not there, so something must be wrong with me. With understanding, you might see, they feel safest when closeness is limited, and they feel threatened when closeness is constant. That realization can be sad because you want more. It can also be relieving because it means you are not imagining things. The pattern makes sense. You are not failing. You are living with someone who has a different relationship to closeness.
And this relief can help with the quiet shame many people carry.
Yes, many partners and friends of avoidant people describe feeling embarrassed about how much they think about the relationship. They may feel embarrassed about how much they care. They may feel embarrassed about wanting reassurance. They might not tell their friends the full truth because they do not want to sound foolish. When they learn about avoidant attachments, they often feel seen. They realize they are not alone. They realize their reactions are normal responses to inconsistency. That recognition can soften shame, and when shame softens, relief comes in.
So it also helps us trust our own feelings again.
Exactly. In avoidant dynamics, partners often minimize their feelings to keep peace. They tell themselves they are overreacting, they tell themselves it is not that bad, they tell themselves they should be grateful for the good moments. When you learn that avoidant patterns exist, you no longer have to explain away your experience.
You can say, I feel lonely, and that loneliness makes sense in this dynamic. You can say, I feel anxious, and my anxiety makes sense because closeness is inconsistent. That permission to trust yourself is deeply relieving.
It sounds like sometimes we even feel calmer when they're not around, which can be confusing because we love them.
That's a classic situation. You might feel strange, thinking it means you're cold or broken. With understanding, you might see that your calm comes from not being exposed to mixed signals. Your nervous system is resting because it is not waiting for the next withdrawal. That realization can bring relief because it helps you stop blaming yourself for feeling better when there is distance. It also gives you important information about what the relationship is doing to you.
And what about the difference between love and capacity? This seems important for protecting self-worth.
Yes, a dismissive avoidant person may love you and still struggle to show up in the ways you need. Without understanding, you might believe that if they loved you, they would be able to change easily. You might think their distance means they do not care. That belief can keep you in a constant fight to prove your worth because you are trying to earn love. Understanding can help you separate those things. You can see that their love may be real and their capacity may be limited. This does not excuse harmful behavior. It simply helps you see what you are dealing with. When you see it clearly, you stop chasing an illusion of what could be. You start working with reality.
This relief of knowing it's not you sounds like it can lead to healthier choices.
It can. When you stop blaming yourself, you stop bargaining with yourself. You stop making deals like, if I never bring up my needs, they will stay. You stop accepting crumbs of connection as proof that you are lovable. You begin to require steadiness. You begin to value your peace. That shift can feel scary because it may change the relationship, yet it can also feel empowering. When you stop trying to earn love, you free energy that can be used for living, creating, resting, and connecting with people who can meet you more consistently.
But we have to be careful not to swing from blaming ourselves to blaming them entirely, right?
That's a crucial point. Some people swing from self-blame into blame of the avoidant person. They think, it is not me, it is all them. That can feel satisfying for a moment, yet it can keep you stuck in anger. The deeper relief is more balanced. It says, I am not the problem, and I also do not have to make the other person the villain. It says, their pattern existed before me, and I can still choose what I will accept. It says, I can have compassion without sacrificing my well-being. That balance brings the most lasting calm.
And it can bring a sense of grief for what you tried so hard to achieve.
Yes, you might look back and see how much you tried. You remember the nights you stayed up worrying. You remember the conversations you rehearsed. You remember the times you apologized for having feelings. When you realize it is not you, you may feel grief for how hard you worked to be lovable. That grief is part of the relief. It is the moment you stop fighting for what should have been given freely. It is the moment you begin to offer yourself the kindness you were trying to earn from someone else.
So ultimately, it's about reclaiming your own dignity.
Absolutely. Realizing it's not me does not solve every problem, yet it changes the ground you stand on. You stop living in a story of personal inadequacy. You stop treating your needs as mistakes. You stop confusing someone's fear of closeness with your lack of worth. That change brings relief because it returns you to your own dignity. You are allowed to want steady love. You are allowed to feel hurt when you do not get it. You are allowed to stop shrinking. When you understand that the distance is not a measure of you, you begin to come home to yourself. And that homecoming is one of the most relieving things a person can experience.
That's incredibly powerful. Now, let's talk about another way understanding can help. Reframing rejection as fear instead of dislike. That sounds like a game changer.
It really is, Theodore. This shift can change how you carry an avoidant relationship inside your body. It is the shift from experiencing withdrawal as rejection to understanding withdrawal as fear. This does not mean you pretend it does not hurt. It does not mean you accept behavior that harms you. It means you change the story you tell yourself about what the withdrawal means. When you believe withdrawal means dislike, your heart collapses. You feel unworthy, you feel embarrassed, you feel desperate to fix yourself. When you understand that withdrawal often comes from fear, you can still feel pain, yet the pain is not fused with shame. You can hold your dignity while you grieve the distance. That is what reframing can offer.
So even if they say they care, the experience of them becoming distant still feels like rejection.
Exactly. Rejection is not just spoken words, it's an experience. If someone repeatedly becomes distant when you reach for them, you experience that as being pushed away. If someone shuts down when you share a feeling, you experience that as being dismissed. If someone disappears after closeness, you experience that as being left. Those experiences land in the body as rejection because they feel like being unwanted. The mind then tries to make sense of the feeling by attaching a meaning to it, and the easiest meaning is, they do not like me enough. That meaning can become a private belief that shapes everything you do.
What if you send a loving message and get a really short reply, or no reply at all? How does this reframe help there?
Your immediate physical reaction might be a tightening in your chest. You think, they do not care. You might send another message to try to get warmth. You might become cold to protect yourself. You might spend hours thinking about what you did wrong. In this moment, the nervous system is not responding to logic. It is responding to the feeling of reaching and not being met. Reframing begins when you pause and consider another interpretation. The avoidant person may be feeling pressured by the closeness of your message. They may be afraid that responding warmly will create expectation. They may be overwhelmed by their own feelings and not know how to handle them. They may still care and they may still be afraid.
So fear is often the real reason behind their behavior, even if they seem confident and unaffected?
Yes, fear is often the hidden engine of dismissive avoidant. This can be hard to believe because dismissive avoidant people often look confident. They may look composed. They may seem unaffected. Their fear is not always visible as anxiety. It can show up as irritation, distance, logic, or detachment. It can show up as a sudden need for independence. It can show up as a strong reaction to normal needs. Underneath these reactions, there's often a worry that closeness will lead to loss of control, loss of self, or emotional overwhelm. In other words, fear does not always look like trembling. Sometimes fear looks like shutting the door and acting like you did not need anyone anyway.
That changes everything. When I think they don't like me, I feel small and wanting to prove my worth. But if I think they are afraid, it's different.
It is. When you think, they do not like me, you feel small. You feel defective. You want to prove your value. When you think, they are afraid, you may still feel sad, yet you are less likely to collapse into shame. You can see the behavior as a coping strategy rather than a verdict on your worth. This protects your self-esteem. It also gives you more accurate information about what you are dealing with. If the issue is dislike, then the relationship is probably over. If the issue is fear, then the relationship may still have room for growth, though growth would require willingness from the avoidant person.
So if I bring up the future, like moving in together, and they pull away, it's not that they don't want me, but that the future makes them afraid?
That's the reframe. The future makes the relationship feel more binding, and binding makes them afraid. This does not mean you should accept never planning anything. It means you stop treating their discomfort as proof you are unwanted. You begin to see that your desire for closeness is not the trigger because you are wrong. It is the trigger because closeness activates their fear.
And this reframe can also help with anger, because sometimes we feel like they're intentionally hurting us.
Yes, many partners and friends feel anger toward avoidant people, and often that anger is understandable. Yet, anger sometimes grows larger because the partner believes the avoidant person is intentionally withholding. They believe the avoidant person is punishing them. They believe the avoidant person is playing games. Sometimes avoidant people do behave in ways that are unfair, and sometimes they do manipulate to keep control. Still, many times the behavior is less calculated than it appears. It is reactive. It is the result of feeling exposed and wanting to regain safety. When you see fear, you may still set boundaries, but your boundaries can come from clarity rather than hostility. That protects your own heart from becoming hardened.
How does this change our immediate reactions in those moments?
If you interpret withdrawal as dislike, you might chase or protest, trying to prove that you are lovable. That chasing can increase pressure, which increases avoidance. If you interpret withdrawal as fear, you might respond with steadiness. You might give space while also naming what you need. You might say, "I hear that you need a little time, and I need us to reconnect later today." You might stop sending repeated messages. You might focus on your own support system. You might avoid the frantic effort to get their attention back. This kind of response can lower the intensity in the dynamic. It can also protect you from losing yourself.
Instead of asking, "Do you still love me?" after they become cold, which probably triggers defensiveness, what's a better way to phrase it?
With the reframe, you might instead say, "I feel you pulling back, and it helps me if you can tell me when you need space and when we will reconnect." That language does not beg for love. It asks for behavior that creates safety. It also communicates respect for both people's needs. Whether the avoidant person can meet that request is another matter, yet the reframe helps you ask from dignity rather than panic.
But does understanding their fear mean we just have to put up with bad behavior?
No, it is very important to be clear that fear may explain behavior, and explanation does not equal permission. Someone can be afraid and still be responsible for how they treat you. Someone can have an attachment wound and still be accountable for communication, respect, and repair. Reframing is not a tool for tolerating neglect. It is a tool for protecting your self-worth while you decide what you will do next. It helps you hold the truth that you are not unlovable even if this person cannot stay close consistently.
And it can help with that feeling of competing with other things in their life, like work or hobbies.
Yes, many partners of avoidant people become jealous, not because the avoidant person is cheating, but because the avoidant person seems more engaged with work, hobbies, or friends than with the relationship. The partner might think, they care more about those things than they care about me. That thought is painful. The reframe is that the avoidant person may feel safer in spaces where closeness is limited and expectations are clearer. Work does not ask for vulnerability in the same way. Hobbies do not ask for emotional repair. Friendships may be more superficial. The avoidant person may gravitate toward those spaces when intimacy feels intense. This does not mean you should accept being second place. It means you stop using their retreat into safer spaces as proof you are less worthy.
There's also a tender side to this reframe, seeing their sadness and compassion.
When you begin to see fear, you may also see the sadness in the avoidant person. You may recognize that they are protecting themselves from pain they once felt. You may see that they might not know how to receive love without feeling trapped. That recognition can bring compassion. Compassion can be healing. It can also be dangerous if it turns into self-sacrifice. The healthiest compassion includes you. It says, "I understand you are afraid, and I also matter." It says, "I can care about your fear, and I will not abandon my own needs to soothe it."
So over time, this reframe can create a calmer internal environment for us.
Yes, instead of riding every withdrawal like a wave that knocks you down, you begin to stand on steadier ground. You notice the withdrawal and you feel the pain, yet you do not immediately make it about your value. You remind yourself that this person's distance is often a sign of their limits, not your lack. You breathe. You reach for support. You choose your next step with more calm. That calm is what people often mean when they say understanding is powerful. It is not about becoming indifferent. It is about becoming anchored.
It sounds like reframing really helps protect our hearts.
In the end, reframing rejection as fear is a way of returning dignity to your own heart. It does not deny the hurt of being pushed away. It does not erase the loneliness of inconsistent connection. It simply removes the poison of shame from the pain. Pain without shame is easier to carry. It is also easier to respond to wisely. When you can see the behavior as fear, you can decide with clearer eyes what you want, what you will accept, and what you need to feel safe. That clarity is one of the greatest protections you can give yourself in any relationship.
That clarity sounds like it can also create a healthy kind of distance, not coldness, but an inner peace.
That's exactly it, Theodore. It's the emotional distance that comes from clarity, and it's very healthy. When you're close to someone with a dismissive avoidance style, it's easy to get tangled up emotionally. You might find yourself chasing, trying to figure things out, waiting, and hoping. Your mood might even depend on how responsive they are. When they're warm, you feel great. When they pull away, you feel anxious or sad. That roller coaster happens because your heart keeps trying to close the gap and make the connection steady. Clarity can change this. It doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop confusing their patterns with your worth. It means you stop treating the relationship as a mystery you must solve. When you see what is happening clearly, you can take a step back inside yourself. That step back is emotional distance, and it is often what brings peace.
So this isn't about giving the silent treatment or being cruel. It's something internal.
It's an inner boundary. It's the ability to observe what is happening without being consumed by it. When you have clarity, you can watch a pattern unfold and think, this is what they do when closeness increases. You can notice a withdrawal and think, this is familiar. You do not have to panic. You do not have to chase. You might still feel sad, yet you are less likely to abandon yourself to restore connection. That inner steadiness is what people mean when they talk about emotional distance in a healthy way.
And it starts by looking at the bigger picture, not just each moment.
Yes, clarity often begins when you stop asking, what did I do today? And start asking, what is the repeated experience? Instead of focusing on each moment, you look at the pattern over time. You might notice that the avoidant person is affectionate when things are light and distant when you talk about commitment. You might notice they become cold after vulnerable conversations. You might notice they shut down during conflict and return later acting normal. You might notice they respond best when you ask for nothing. These observations can be painful because they reveal limitations. They can also be freeing because they remove false hope. False hope is often what keeps you entangled. You keep thinking that if you say it differently, love them better, or wait longer, the pattern will change. Clarity tells you the pattern is the pattern, unless the person chooses to change it with effort.
So if they don't respond for hours to a message, with clarity, I don't have to panic.
In the past, you might have stared at your phone, feeling your heart tighten, wondering what it means. You might have sent another message, or you might have become angry, or you might have decided to act indifferent. With clarity, you might still notice the absence, yet you can hold a different thought. You might think they often go quiet when they are stressed or when they feel pressured. You might also think my life does not stop when they are quiet. You can choose to continue your day. You might decide to check in later or to wait for them. Either way, you are not being pulled under by the meaning you attach to silence. That is emotional distance created by clarity.
It sounds like clarity helps us see what's real, rather than what we wish could be.
It does. Many people stay emotionally entangled because they are relating to potential rather than reality. They hold on to the rare tender moments and imagine a future where those moments become the daily norm. They tell themselves the avoidant person is just afraid and that love will heal them. Love can be healing, yet love without participation does not transform patterns. When you get clear, you stop using potential as a substitute for steady behavior. You see what is here now. You see what you are living with. This does not force you to leave, but it gives you the power to decide. Decision-making is calming. Entanglement thrives in indecision.
So if they say they love you, but their behavior doesn't match, clarity helps you prioritize the behavior.
Yes, if words and behavior do not match, behavior is usually the more reliable guide to what your daily life will feel like. When you accept that, you stop being pulled around by promises. You start orienting to what is actually happening. That is emotional distance, because it separates you from the sway of every hopeful statement.
And it helps us stop shrinking our own needs.
When you are entangled, you often try to reduce your needs to fit the avoidant person's comfort. You might tell yourself you can live with less affection. You might tell yourself you can live with less communication. You might tell yourself you do not need repair after conflict. You might start calling these compromises maturity. Some compromise is part of any relationship. The problem is when compromise becomes self-abandonment. Clarity helps you see when you have crossed that line. You begin to notice that you are not calmer, you are numb. You begin to notice that you are not easier, you are smaller. When you see that, you can stop negotiating your basic needs downward. You can begin to hold them as real. Holding your needs creates emotional distance because it places you on your own side.
It also helps us not get caught up in their emotional ups and downs.
Avoidant people often have an internal cycle of closeness and retreat. They may feel warm, then overwhelmed, then distant, then warm again. If you are entangled, you ride that cycle with them. You feel happy when they are warm, you feel anxious when they are distant. Your day becomes shaped by whether they are open or closed. Clarity helps you see that their cycle is theirs. You can care about it, yet you do not have to live inside it. You can choose steadiness. You can anchor your mood in your own life, your friends, your routines, your values. This is not detachment in a cold way. It is self-respect.
So if you have a great conversation and then they become distant, you don't have to think the closeness was fake.
Clarity allows a different interpretation. The closeness may have been real. The distance may also be real. Both can coexist in an avoidant person. When you accept that, you stop building your identity on the closeness alone. You stop making the closeness into proof that everything will be okay. You enjoy it, and you also stay grounded. That grounding is emotional distance. It is the ability to be present without losing yourself.
And in conflict, how does clarity help us respond differently?
When you are entangled, conflict feels like an emergency. You may fear that if you do not fix it immediately, you will lose the person. You may tolerate disrespect to keep them from leaving. You may apologize excessively. You may chase repair. Clarity helps you see that a relationship that can only continue if you abandon your dignity is not safe. With that understanding, you can respond to conflict more calmly. You can say, I want to talk when we are both ready, and I need us to return to this. If the avoidant person refuses repair, clarity helps you see what that means. You stop interpreting refusal as a temporary mood and start interpreting it as a relational limit. That interpretation creates emotional distance because it reduces your urge to chase.
This clarity can bring a sense of sadness, though, right? A grief for what you hoped for.
It can. When you stop fantasizing, you may feel the loss of what you hoped for. You may realize that you have been holding the relationship up with effort and optimism. You may see that your longing has been bigger than the reality offered. That realization can hurt. Yet grief is often the doorway to peace. Grief is what happens when you stop fighting reality. Emotional distance is not always a cheerful state. Sometimes it is quiet sorrow paired with self-respect. That sorrow can be healing because it is honest.
And it helps us stop feeling responsible for their fear.
Many partners become emotionally fused because they take responsibility for the avoidant person's comfort. They try to say the perfect thing, they try to avoid triggering, they try to keep the relationship calm. Clarity tells you that the avoidant person's fear is theirs to work with. You can support them, you cannot do the work for them. When you accept that, you stop taking every withdrawal as a personal project. You stop exhausting yourself, you return that responsibility where it belongs. That return creates emotional distance, and it often brings a sense of quiet relief.
So, if they need space and disappear, with clarity, you react differently.
In the past, you might have used that time to panic, plan, and prepare a perfect message to bring them back. With clarity, you might still feel discomfort, yet you choose a different response. You might decide to take care of yourself, see friends, rest, or focus on your own life. You might decide that if they return, you will talk about what you need. You might also decide that you will not accept disappearing as normal. Whatever you decide, you are no longer using their distance to judge yourself. You are using the time to care for yourself. That is emotional distance in practice.
In the end, clarity creates emotional distance because it changes our relationship to uncertainty.
It turns a confusing pattern into something you can name. It turns self-blame into self-respect. It turns frantic effort into grounded choice. Emotional distance does not mean you stop loving. It means you love without losing yourself. It means you hold the relationship with open eyes.
When you can do that, you create a calm inside you that does not depend on someone else's moods. That calm is not the end of connection. It is the beginning of peace.
That's a powerful shift. It sounds like a lot of people in these relationships try to fix the other person. Is education really more powerful than trying to fix things?
It is, Theodore. It's a shift that can save you years of exhaustion. Fixing is a kind of hope that becomes a job. Education is a kind of clarity that becomes a boundary. When you're with someone who pulls away, it's natural to want to repair what's happening. You might read articles, try new ways of talking, and shape yourself into someone who feels easier to love. You might even believe that if you can just say the right thing or create the perfect environment, the avoidant person will relax and stay close. That belief can keep you trapped in effort. Education is different. Education gives you a map. A map does not drag someone home. It shows you where you are, where the roads lead, and what the terrain requires. With a map, you stop walking in circles.
So fixing often starts from a good place, like compassion, but can become a burden.
Yes, you sense they're scared, you see glimpses of tenderness, you may even hear pieces of their story. You want to help, you want to heal the relationship, you want love to work. None of that is foolish. The pain begins when fixing becomes your main way of staying connected. You start treating the relationship like a project. You become the one who studies, adjusts, and initiates every repair. You might take responsibility for the avoidant person's comfort, hoping that comfort will lead to closeness. In that state, love becomes performance. You are constantly asking yourself, what should I do to make this better? That question sounds caring, yet it is also a sign that you have placed your peace in someone else's hands.
And this leads to a cycle where you keep trying to manage their comfort without really solving anything.
Absolutely. The avoidant person withdraws, and you decide to handle it better next time. You research how to speak calmly, you learn about giving space, you practice saying things without sounding emotional, you change your approach. Sometimes it works for a short time. The avoidant person may respond with warmth when you are less direct. You feel hopeful, and you invest more. Then the pattern returns. You assume you must not have done it right, you try again. Each cycle makes you more skilled at managing the avoidant person's comfort and less skilled at listening to your own limits. This is how fixing can quietly become self-abandonment.
So education is better because it changes your focus from trying to control them to simply understanding the pattern.
Right. When you educate yourself, you stop trying to force the avoidant person into consistency through your behavior. You begin to understand the pattern itself, including why it happens and what it tends to look like over time. That understanding does not guarantee change in the other person. What it does guarantee is that you will stop being surprised by the same pain. Surprise is a big part of suffering. When you are surprised by withdrawal, it feels like a new rejection every time. When you understand the pattern, you still feel hurt, yet you are less likely to be knocked off balance. You can prepare yourself emotionally. You can decide what you will do when the pattern appears. That decision-making is power.
And it helps us see the difference between someone who is just avoidant and someone who is willing to grow.
Precisely. Two people can have similar patterns, and their willingness can be completely different. Fixing keeps you focused on the person's potential. Education helps you observe their behavior. Do they take responsibility? Do they return to conversations after they calm down? Do they communicate when they need space? Do they apologize when they hurt you? Do they show curiosity about your experience? These signs matter because growth requires participation. Education helps you watch for participation. Fixing often blinds you to the absence of it because you keep supplying the work yourself.
So if you suggest counseling and they just say they'll think about it and never follow through, that's important information.
It is. Education helps you recognize that a pattern of non-follow-through is information. It tells you something about their capacity and willingness. That clarity is painful, yet it can also be relieving because it stops you from investing in fantasies. You begin to invest in reality, and reality is where peace is built.
And education helps reduce self-blame because you realize their withdrawal isn't always about your mistake.
Exactly. When you are trying to fix someone, every setback feels like a reflection of your failure. You think, I did not handle it right. You think, I should have been calmer. You think, I pushed too hard. Education helps you see that withdrawal is often triggered by closeness itself, not by your mistakes. You can be gentle and still be met with distance. When you accept that, you stop measuring yourself by whether the avoidant person stays close. You stop using their behavior as the scoreboard of your worth. This reduces anxiety and restores dignity.
This also changes the kind of compassion we offer, from rescuing to something more balanced.
Fixing compassion is often rescuing. It is the kind of compassion that says, let me carry this so you do not have to. Education-based compassion is steadier. It says, I understand why you struggle, and I also need you to take responsibility for how you treat me. That is compassion with boundaries. It does not shame the avoidant person. It does not abandon the partner. It holds both truths. This kind of compassion is more powerful because it is sustainable. Rescuing burns people out. Boundaried compassion keeps people intact.
So if they're distant and you feel the urge to chase them, education gives you other options.
Fixing would say, if I can just get them to talk, we can solve this. Education might say, when they feel pressured, they withdraw, and chasing usually makes it worse. Education then gives you options. You can step back. You can soothe yourself. You can wait for a calmer moment. You can also decide that disappearing without communication is not acceptable and name that clearly. Education does not tell you to accept everything. It gives you a clearer view of what different responses tend to produce, so you can choose what protects your well-being.
It also helps us stop confusing love with simply a lot of effort on our part.
Many people who try to fix believe that love is proven by how much you are willing to endure and how hard you are willing to work. That belief often comes from early life experiences where love felt conditional. If you grew up believing you had to earn care, you may naturally take on the fixer role in adulthood. Education helps you see that healthy love does not require you to be a therapist, a coach, and a constant emotional translator. Healthy love includes mutual effort. When education helps you see the absence of mutual effort, it becomes harder to rationalize staying in a one-sided dynamic.
So education focuses on principles, not just tactics.
Exactly. Fixing is often focused on tactics, how to phrase, how to time, how to approach. Tactics can help, yet they cannot replace the avoidant person's inner work. Education is focused on principles, how avoidant patterns work, what they tend to cost, and what change would actually require. Principles keep you grounded. They prevent you from being pulled around by each new tactic. They also help you see when you are chasing the illusion that you can manage another person's attachment. You can influence a relationship, you cannot control another person's willingness to show up.
What if a new communication strategy seems to work for a while, but then the pattern returns?
Fixing makes you think you need another strategy. Education makes you ask a different question. Is this person consistently willing to stay engaged in emotional repair, or do they only participate when it is convenient? That question is not cynical, it is realistic. Education helps you ask it without blaming yourself.
And it gives us the language to stand up for ourselves.
Yes. When you understand avoidant attachment, you can describe what is happening in a way that is clear and calm. You can name the cycle, you can name the impact, you can ask for specific changes. You can also recognize when the avoidant person is using the language of attachment to avoid accountability, saying things like, "This is just how I am." Education helps you know that attachment patterns are understandable, yet they are not excuses for disrespect or neglect. That distinction protects you.
So, education returns our life to us.
Ultimately, education is more powerful than fixing because education returns your life to you. Fixing ties your well-being to someone else's change. Education ties your well-being to your own clarity and choices. When you are educated, you can decide whether you want to stay, and if you stay, under what conditions. You can stop pouring energy into trying to make someone become who you need. You can start investing energy into your own steadiness, your own support system, your own self-respect. That does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop making your love into a job that only you perform.
And it's not a cold, detached approach.
No, education is not cold. It is not detached. It is loving in a mature way. It says, I will see reality clearly. I will not lie to myself. I will not abandon myself. I will not confuse someone's fear with my lack of worth. I will choose love that is mutual, or I will choose peace. That is why education is more powerful than fixing. It does not guarantee a particular relationship outcome. It guarantees that you will not lose yourself trying to earn the kind of love you deserved all along.
All of this leads to a sense of empowerment through knowledge. It sounds like knowledge can truly transform feeling powerless into having control over our own lives.
It does, Theodore. In avoidant relationships, many people feel powerless. They feel like they are constantly reacting, constantly adjusting, and constantly trying to keep connection from slipping away. They might feel like the other person sets all the emotional rules because the avoidant person decides when closeness happens and when it stops. They may also feel like their own feelings can't be trusted because the relationship makes them anxious, confused, or self-doubting. Knowledge can change this. When you understand what you are living with, you begin to regain your balance. You stop being controlled by mystery. You stop being controlled by mixed signals. You begin making choices from clarity. That is empowerment.
And this empowerment starts with simply naming what's happening.
Many partners and friends live in a fog for a long time. They sense something is off, yet they cannot quite describe it. They feel lonely, yet they cannot point to a single event. They feel rejected, yet the avoidant person says they care. They feel confused, yet they keep trying. When you learn about avoidant attachment, the fog starts to lift. You recognize patterns. You recognize the cycle of closeness and withdrawal. You recognize the discomfort with vulnerability. You recognize the tendency to minimize emotions. You recognize the way conflict is avoided rather than repaired. Naming these patterns is not about labeling someone as bad. It is about making the invisible visible. Once something is visible, it is easier to respond wisely.
So if I've been thinking I'm too needy for wanting consistent communication, knowledge can change that thought.
Yes, suddenly your need does not feel like a defect. It feels like a response. That shift is empowering because it returns self-trust. Instead of thinking something is wrong with me, you think something is happening here that would affect many people. When you trust yourself again, you stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for your feelings. You begin to advocate for your needs with more steadiness.
And knowledge helps us predict patterns without becoming obsessed or paranoid. Prediction is not the same as paranoia. It is simply understanding what tends to happen and preparing for it. If you know that avoidant people often withdraw after closeness, you can recognize that moment when it arrives. You can notice your own urge to chase. You can pause. You can choose a response that supports your dignity. Without knowledge, you might chase automatically and then feel ashamed. With knowledge, you can say to yourself, this is the moment the cycle usually turns, and I do not have to join it. That is empowerment because it is choice.
So if they become quiet after you ask for something, you don't panic.
You feel panic rising. In the past, you might have sent multiple messages, tried to explain yourself, or taken back your request. With knowledge, you might instead name what you feel and then regulate yourself. You might choose to wait. You might choose to do something grounding. You might also choose to send one calm message that communicates your expectation for reconnection. In doing this, you step out of the role of emotional pursuer. You become someone who can hold discomfort without self-abandonment. That is power. And it helps us understand that while we can be compassionate, it doesn't mean we have to excuse bad behavior.
Many people get stuck because they confuse compassion with simply tolerating everything. They learn that the avoidant person is afraid, and they decide they must accept loneliness as the price of love. Knowledge, when it is deep, does the opposite. It teaches you that fear explains behavior and does not erase impact. It teaches you that you can care about someone and still require consistent respect. It teaches you that attachment patterns are understandable and still changeable only with willingness. When you hold this distinction, you stop being manipulated by your own empathy. You stop using the other person's pain as a reason to ignore your own.
And it helps us understand what real change actually requires.
Many partners and friends feel trapped by hope because they believe that time will fix things. They believe love will soften the avoidant person. They believe that if they are patient enough, closeness will become safe. Knowledge helps you see that avoidant patterns usually shift through conscious effort, practice, and accountability. If the avoidant person refuses to engage in that work, knowledge helps you accept that reality sooner. Accepting reality is empowering because it stops you from waiting for a future that has no support in the present.
So if they promise to change after a conflict, but then do it again, knowledge helps us see that differently.
Without knowledge, you might think they just need more time, and you keep investing. With knowledge, you recognize that repeated promises without follow-through are part of the pattern. You begin to understand that sincerity is not enough. You begin to measure willingness by behavior over time. That measurement is not cold. It is self-protection. It is empowerment because it makes your decision-making grounded instead of wishful.
And knowledge helps us communicate more clearly.
In avoidant relationships, conversations often become vague because both people are trying to avoid triggering each other. The partner may hint instead of asking. The avoidant person may deflect instead of responding. The relationship becomes a place where nothing is said directly, and that creates more anxiety. When you have knowledge, you have language. You can say, when you need space, I need a clear message so I am not left guessing. You can say, I am willing to take a pause and I need us to return to the conversation. You can say, I do not want to chase you and I also will not accept disappearing as normal. These statements are empowering because they are specific and anchored. They do not beg, they do not threaten, they simply name reality and needs.
It also helps us choose where to put our energy.
When you do not understand avoidant patterns, you may invest heavily in strategies that do not work. You might spend hours analyzing texts. You might rehearse conversations. You might try to be perfect. You might sacrifice your friendships, sleep, and joy to manage the relationship. When you understand the dynamic, you begin investing in things that actually support you. You might invest in your own support system. You might invest in therapy. You might invest in rest. You might invest in your own goals. This shift in investment changes your life. It reduces obsession because your life becomes fuller. A full life is empowering because it gives you options.
Like reconnecting with friends after neglecting them for a while.
Yes, you notice you have been neglecting your friends because the relationship has been consuming. Knowledge helps you see that isolation makes you more vulnerable to the avoidant person's inconsistency. When you reconnect with friends, you remember you are valued. You remember you are interesting. You remember you can be met. That remembrance is empowering because it loosens the grip of the avoidant relationship. You are no longer clinging to one source of connection. You are connected to a wider world.
And it helps us set boundaries without feeling guilty.
Many people struggle with boundaries because they fear being unkind. They fear being demanding. They fear hurting the avoidant person. Knowledge helps you see that boundaries are not cruelty. They are clarity about what you will and will not participate in. When you understand the cycle, you can set boundaries that interrupt it. You might decide you will not engage in long text arguments when the avoidant person is shutting down. You might decide you will not accept silent treatment. You might decide that if conflict happens, you will take a pause and then require a return to repair. These boundaries are empowering because they change your role in the relationship. You stop being the person who absorbs everything. You become someone who protects your emotional health.
It's also empowering to know that our own emotional reactions can change in different environments.
Many people in avoidant relationships begin to think they are inherently anxious. They think they are unstable. Knowledge can show them that they often feel calm in steady relationships. This is empowering because it reframes their identity. They are not broken, they are responding. If they leave an avoidant dynamic and enter a healthier one, they may feel their anxiety fade. Knowing this gives people hope that is grounded because it is hope based on environment and choice, rather than hope based on changing someone who refuses to change.
So, empowerment through knowledge doesn't mean the pain completely disappears.
No, it means pain no longer controls you. You may still miss the avoidant person, you may still love them, you may still grieve what you wanted. You may also feel clearer about what you need to be well. Knowledge helps you grieve without self-blame. It helps you love without losing yourself. It helps you stay if the relationship is genuinely growing, and it helps you leave if it is not. Either path becomes more dignified.
That's a truly clear summary of how this knowledge can change a person's life.
In the end, empowerment through knowledge is the return of agency. It is the moment you stop living inside someone else's pattern and start living inside your own values. You stop treating confusion as normal. You stop treating inconsistency as love. You stop treating your needs as shame. You start making choices based on steadiness, respect, and mutual effort. That is the real power of learning about avoidant attachment. It is not that you become an expert on someone else. It is that you become clearer about yourself. And when you are clear about yourself, you are much harder to pull into a life that keeps diminishing you. This information, remember, all comes from Mindy Rivers' book, Understanding the Dismissive Avoidant Attachment Style.
If this conversation resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit from hearing it.